HursleyFM. Oh yes, my friend, I'm here today to talk about HursleyFM, a podcast hosted by Johnny Mac, Mr. Jezz, and Dr. Adrian Warman. How cool is that? And if you wonder what the topics be, they talk to world experts and gurus about new technologies. Yes, it's so exciting. Oh yeah, you know it's so enticing.
Hello everybody and welcome to Season 1, Episode 3 of HursleyFM.
You're optimistic.
Dear. The cliffhanger is, will they make it to Episode 4?
Indeed. My name is Adrian Warman. I'm delighted to welcome you to the show, and with me today I have...
Hello, I'm Jezz Kelway.
And I'm John McNamara.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Well done. Right,
Very pleased we all know our own name.
I have mine written down. So.
So we have a packed programme for you today, but as usual we're going to start off with some tech news.
Yeah, we're going to try and be swift because we've got a cracking interview coming up.
Do you know what?
Yeah,
We have.
But you might need to set aside a bit of time for it.
Yes.
It's worth every second.
It's worth it.
Me.
Absolutely. So, gentlemen, tech news. What interesting things have happened this week?
Tech news. What about that hard drive company? What was it? TrueCrypt. That was it.
Yes.
Where
Where did they go?
What happened to them?
Where did they go?
What's going on there?
Adrian, you know.
So TrueCrypt is a software product that is a hard drive encryption technology. So the idea is that you can't access any of the data on the hard drive in your computer unless you know the password. And TrueCrypt was one of many products out there to protect your computer system. And somewhat surprisingly, earlier this week, a message appeared on the TrueCrypt website saying basically, don't use TrueCrypt anymore, it's not secure. And there was a lot of discussion about what's going on, what is happening in the world of TrueCrypt, because it had been a very well-respected technology. It was, although open source, it was actually going through an audit process to make sure that it really was as secure as people thought. So all the signs were very good, and yet it suddenly vanished. A lot of discussion about had it been hacked, maybe a rogue committer into the software stack, but no, all the indications at this current time are that it was closed down by the people who were working on it.
Anything suspicious going on there, do you think?
Very hard to tell.
Yeah.
Very hard to tell.
Can you make something up, do you think?
We don't like to speculate. But I think there's an important message from this, which is TrueCrypt. A lot of people thought of it as being open source, and it's true that you could see the actual software source and work with it if you wanted to. But the TrueCrypt license was unique to TrueCrypt, and it's not an open source license in the usual sense. So one of the big arguments in favour, one of the big arguments in favour of open source is often that anybody could take the source and continue the project. But here we have an example where you could see the source, but license-wise you wouldn't be able to continue with it. So it's not going to be easy for people to continue using TrueCrypt.
Yeah, most of the rumour mills are saying that it was not as secure as many people thought, and that's the reason why it's gone. It professed to be a very strong encryption software to protect you and your hard disk and all your bits and bobs. But it actually had some unfixed security errors, and discretion was the better part of valour, and they just shut it down.
Really interesting.
Me personally, in layman's terms, which I often have to speak in because that's all I understand, would I want open source encryption software? You know what I mean? It's like the way that you've encrypted your software is available for everybody to see. It kind of doesn't inspire confidence for me. I mean, I understand the security algorithms may be hidden and all that kind of stuff, and so randomised that you could never find. But it's still, I wouldn't bet my business on open source security software.
That's a good point, actually. And the fact now that it was there yesterday, and now it's not, and you can't use it anymore. What if you're a current user? What if you're depending upon it? What happens then?
So it's kind of dangerous. The dangers of open source in general, really, isn't it? It's subject somewhat to a whim.
Yeah.
So you can't really fully support it, although the communities generally do.
Yeah.
And they're very supportive. Maybe this is an example of where the community couldn't.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed.
It's all supposition, but I like a bit of conjecture.
Gotcha.
And of course we saw a similar thing not so long ago with OpenSSL, which resulted in the Heartbleed probably.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Perfect example.
Boom, that was a big hit, wasn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
So, any other tech news?
Oh, I saw a Dalek.
Did what?
I saw a Dalek. Well, at least it looked like a Dalek.
Really? What was that then?
The Google self-driving car.
Amazing.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Look, it could be a TARDIS, I suppose.
It looks. There are certain things about it that are reminiscent. There's sort of a vaguely boxy shape and a rotating thing on top.
To be honest, it could be an invasion strategy by the Daleks.
Yes.
Right?
Do you know
break
what?
down,
Yeah.
break down human perceptions
Indeed.
by slowly morphing something as useful and benign as a car into an ultimate planet-killing death machine.
I'm looking at one right now, and they kind of got that very kind of indifferent machine-like anthropomorphised face on the front, haven't they?
They have.
They have like two little eyes, little nose, and kind of a very flat.
How long before that is a sink plunger? I ask you.
Yeah. I think what we should probably do is get some expert advice on
I
this.
think we need to do that.
Oh, I see where you're going there. I like what you're doing. I'm a fan of your work.
So I think we should perhaps go and have a chat with somebody.
I think, who can we think of that could be an expert in the Doctor Who universe? That's the sound of thought, folks.
It is the sound of...
The smell of burning rubber in this room is tangible.
The sound of the rabbits working the controls in our heads.
Well, ours, just mine and yours.
Indeed.
Adrian's got an actually functioning brain.
I think we should talk to Peter Anghelides.
I think that's an absolutely excellent idea.
I'm delighted, honoured to welcome Peter Anghelides to our humble little abode. I think pretty much anybody who works on site here in Hursley will be aware of Peter, but for those poor, deluded individuals who haven't yet heard of you...
He's laying it on thick today.
I really am. I am totally awestruck
That's
today.
not going to dry in 24 hours.
Do you know, I should warn you, I can take any amount of flattery.
Come to the right place.
So, a very, very quick, easy question to begin with. Who are you, and what is your role within Hursley and within IBM?
I currently have my favourite job title ever in IBM, because I am called Talent Programs Manager for our software business in the UK, and my mum loves this because she makes me sound like Simon Cowell. And I do mention this when I do recruitment events outside of IBM, and I do warn them. It's not like you go, no, you haven't got the job, I'm sorry. It's a no from me.
That's not that we wouldn't want to do that.
It's so
That
tempting,
could be
but I do.
We could build that buzzer.
And so it's helping the leadership team here in our software business to identify who are going to be our next set of technical and business leaders, and identify them at an appropriate time in their career and help make sure they get the opportunity to either demonstrate or prove we were wrong in the first place.
I, for one, have always liked you, Peter. I just wanted to make it really clear.
I am taking names.
Don't worry, John, you don't fit the demographic.
I think present company can be accepted.
Thank you. Yeah.
So that's one part of it. The other part is that I'm involved in management development, so who are going to be our first line managers, second line managers, that kind of stuff, and university relations, so which are the particular universities. We love them all, obviously, but there are some that we pay particular attention to because they're a great place for collaborative research or for recruiting or for working with the academics in those institutions.
And do you get much opportunity to go out on campus and talk to students?
I do, yes. And of course we have lots of them coming here on site to the Hursley laboratory because this is where we do most of our recruitment activities.
Oh, sweet. All right. Which university did you go to most recently?
I went to Manchester and there I talked to their physics and astronomy department about why they ought to send folk to join us as software developers.
Cool.
I talked to their maths department. I went to talk to their humanities department. Yeah, just to encourage them to think positively about IBM.
So it's not just about going to talk to computer scientists?
It's not, although I do also talk to them as well, and in fact that's when I'm next going to go to Manchester in September as part of a skills workshop that they've asked me to run for them.
So you've got the best job in Hursley. How did you
don't tell everyone.
It's a secret.
How did you get to that? What's your sort of career history? Is that right?
Most of my IBM career moves had been me saying to somebody, do you know what, I think you ought to do this, or I think we ought to be able to do that, or why don't we do it the other way? You know, and why don't you talk to that guy over there? And all too often what's happened is someone said, well, if you're so smart, why don't you do it? Which is great. It's a fantastic way to be given a chance to do a job because you're being given permission to do something you made a sensible suggestion about. And if you haven't made a sensible suggestion, they're never going to ask you to do it in the first place. So it was largely to do with that. Prior to me doing this role, I'd been involved with recruitment for all of our different businesses, but I've been working as an operations manager for a director who was actually based in Austin. And so I was quite enjoying that. I was doing what IBM calls a virtual assignment. Virtual is IBM's code word for cheap. Because you get to do an assignment for someone in another country, but you don't actually get to go and live in that country on IBM's dime.
Cool. Now, you mentioned that when you went to Manchester, you visited the humanities department, and there's a bit of a segue that I can put in there along the lines of humanities, writing, creativity, technical writing.
Very good.
Seamless.
Seamless. Absolutely. Now, I've actually written some notes here, and as far as I'm aware, you've had a lot of involvement in a number of really big name public media inspirations for so many of us, in particular Doctor Who, Torchwood, Blake Seven, and I'll say more recently, although I don't know if more recently is quite the right phrase, Big Finish productions as well.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit more about what life is like, creative writing in such a fantastic universe?
Well, I've got to be careful how I describe this, because I do a job for IBM, and don't be fooled by these boyish good looks, but I've been in IBM for 26 years, and I love what I do, and I don't want to change, and I'm very happy doing this. So, writing scripts and novels and short stories and stuff like that is a hobby I get paid for. And to be honest, when I say that, all my friends who are writing for IBM are not writing for other companies as a full-time job get a bit cross, because for them it's a living. But it's a hobby I get paid for, and I love doing it. And I got involved because I've always been a fan of those sorts of science fiction programs. And so when some of my pals got involved with BBC Books, when they were setting these things up, I said, I wouldn't mind having a go at that. And they asked me to write some stuff as a sample, and that seemed to go down well, and so I got into doing that. And then if you demonstrate that you can do something that people enjoy, you deliver on time, you're prepared to work for the money they're offering, then they're going to ask you to do some more. And so that's how I've got subsequent commissions for things like Torchwood and Blake Seven and whatnot. Big Finish is a company which is set up by a group of Doctor Who enthusiasts who wanted to do Doctor Who audios when Doctor Who wasn't on the air, and they've continued doing those sorts of things since. Yes. Big Finish is a great name for the company, isn't it? I think the idea is, Big Finish theatrically, rather than...
Because Big Finish is...
well, I was thinking more of...
yes, I know. We've been advised to move away from that.
I'm being escorted from the building even as we speak.
Yes. And do you find that because you've got this involvement with the different media types, have you got your own fan base following?
You've got those three, Peter.
Yeah,
that's more
than
the
present company accepted.
You mentioned that they're big name franchises. I'm more of a long name writer, I think. I always say that I get commissioned because I'm alphabetically first, apart from Ben Aronovich.
Oh, yes.
And he's busy doing something else at the moment.
So you've presumably met many of the big names.
I have, because rather flatteringly, I sometimes get invited to go along to conventions. So in February of this year, I went along to a convention they run called Gallifrey One, and that's held in an airport hotel in Los Angeles, which, as airport hotels go, is quite a nice place to go for it. And something like 3,500 people turn up for this. I have to tell you, they're not coming because I'm there. I just happen to be, on the lower part of the running order. But I get the chance to meet, the actors and the writers and the directors and so on in the green room there, and they pretend to remember who I am. It's very flattering.
That's interesting because that's in the States. So, is there a significant following for Doctor Who in the States?
There is, absolutely. Yeah, I mean there is obviously a big following for it in the UK, but it's particularly since it's Doctor Who's got onto BBC America.
Right.
It's got a much broader distribution than it used to have when it was just on the PBS channel.
So, who's your favourite Doctor?
Oh, I love them all, obviously. Particularly if any of them are listening at the moment.
Of course. There'll be no chance of that.
No, don't worry about that.
One of my pals, who's worked on the TV series, said that he went along to talk to his old university recently, and he said that what people like to say is you always like the Doctor you grew up with.
Yes.
So that's usually your favourite. So for me, that will be John Pertwee and Tom Baker. Again, don't be fooled by the boyish good looks. He said that he was saying this, and somebody in the audience says, "Yeah, that's true for me as well. So I grew up with David Tennant." And he said that was the point at which he felt very, very old.
Yes. I had a similar moment. I was going to an 80s party, mate's 40th, and I popped into a fancy dress shop. And I said, I'm going as Doctor Who, obviously Tom Baker. And the same girl went, "Tom Baker? He was Doctor Who?" And I was like, "Oh no, God." I thought, yeah, he was, yeah. I'll leave now, thanks, cheers, bye-bye.
And it was a very nice touch when they brought Tom back recently.
Yeah.
Oh, for the 50th anniversary show. Yes, that was super, wasn't it?
Yes. And I guess I can't leave this topic without asking you a little bit about what you think Peter Capaldi will be like.
I think he's going to be super.
So do I.
And you think it's interesting because although he doesn't look it, he is about the same age that William Hartnell was when he was playing the part originally.
Really?
Yeah, I think partly because they aged up Hartnell when he was playing the role. They put a dusty old wig on him, and partly because I think Peter Capaldi just scrubs up a bit better. He doesn't look quite that age.
It's very hard to tell, obviously, but my educated guess is that he's going to bring a little bit more, dare one say it, Pertwee-like gravitas, perhaps?
You just don't know, do you? Because as a big enthusiast of John Pertwee, when Tom Baker came in, I thought, who is this? Who is this person? How can he take over this role that I've been watching for the recent years? And, very quickly establish himself as...
Yes,
because
Tom Baker was the longest-serving Doctor, wasn't he?
Yes, he was, yeah. Depends how you count.
True.
This is a Doctor Who fact off. This is amazing. I didn't expect this. This is amazing. I always think Pertwee and Wurzel Gummidge, but then I'm mostly uneducated.
Well, I read Tom Baker's autobiography, and he was a monk.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Was he?
He was a monk.
He's a dude, isn't he?
No, he's just a legend.
Yeah.
Yes, and he has a direct link to technology because he was on a one-off TV special with Douglas Adams talking about hypermedia.
Yes, Hyperland, wasn't it called?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
When was this?
Oh, good few years back.
I hope you're all making notes because there'll be a test at the end.
So can I jump in with a question there? Because is that the only kind of creative writing that you've been involved with? Sort of Doctor Who kind of universe?
It's the only stuff I've ever had published. Yes,
Right.
I don't have any powerful desire to publish my own original novel. And one of the nice things about writing for these franchises is that people ask you, and as long as it meets the appropriate criteria for publication, they publish it. So you're writing something in the anticipation it's going to get published, or broadcast, or whatever. Whereas if you're writing an original novel, as some of my pals do, there's always a possibility that they might not find an agent, or their agent will say, "I can't sell it," or the publisher will say, "I don't want it."
Yeah.
And also involved with Blake 7.
Yeah.
Go on.
That's terrific. Because I was a big enthusiast for Blake 7 when it was originally on. So that started at the end of the 70s and ran into the middle of the 80s. And again, this company called Big Finish wanted to do original audios with the original cast, all the surviving members of the original cast, and they knew I was an enthusiast and asked me to pitch some ideas, and I did, and they've asked me to do some of those. And because they had a particular gap for one particular episode, they wanted to do something which explained why Blake left the series. Because
that's where I was going.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask.
Because when I started watching this in the 80s,
There's no Blake.
there was no Blake was never to be found.
Didn't they spend ages searching for him?
They
Because,
did.
and this isn't a reference to anywhere, but it was my dad's favourite TV show, and I would always get in the most trouble when I caused mischief during Blake 7.
Right,
So it became much safer for my ears not to get clipped if I sat down and watched it. And obviously, I'm sure that was part of the, I ended up with the sci-fi bug, and I'm sure that's a big part of it. But I never understood what happened to Blake, and I've never scratched that itch.
No.
well, I'd like to strongly recommend at this point you listen to my audio Warship, available from Big Finish Productions.
Lovely, that was beautiful.
I see.
That's a beautiful
I
drop.
like it.
So I should warn you, anyone who works for Big Finish is obliged to say at some stage during an interview, buy product.
By product,
Buy
yeah, no,
product.
you got to. Yeah.
Other question: how did Servalan escape the Liberator at the end of the series? Because wasn't she just about to be blown up and suddenly reappeared as someone completely different?
Well, she would have had to move really fast, so at the very least she would have had to take her high heels off.
Yes.
I'll just have a moment.
You touched John in a very special
I'm
way.
going to edit that out.
She's in one of mine. She's in Warship. So that was really great. I got to meet them all in the studio while they were doing the recordings as well. So
Brilliant.
It was tremendously good fun.
Yeah, I bet. That's
it was,
fantastic.
actually.
So, do you mind me asking it? How do those recordings work? Because I've done music studio recordings, right? But I've never done, and I'm always intrigued because as John will attest to, I would love to do voiceover work for somebody somewhere, right? So I'm trying to do some voiceover work for IIB videos, but it's not quite the same as Blake 7.
Hey, you've done Bluto, fella.
I've done Bluto,
No.
that's true.
Steady
My
on.
Birmingham alter egos. how does that work? Do you mind describing how that all works?
Yeah, so one of the things that distinguishes Big Finish audios from, for example, Radio 4 drama is Radio 4 drama is a bit like we are here, around one or a few microphones.
Okay.
And if you want to give the impression that you're walking away or disappearing, you fade away as you walk. And then you come back to the microphone with a loud voice.
Yes.
The way that Big Finish do it,
incorporate that.
the way Big Finish do it is they have each of the individual actors in a separate booth with a separate microphone. They record them on unique tracks. And there's several advantages to this. One is if you've got a monster you want to give a voice effect to, you can do that in post-production rather than during the performance. It means that if you need to do pickups with individuals, you can do it. And very occasionally, an actor isn't available for the same studio as everybody else, and they can therefore record him or her separately with somebody else performing the lines for them, and record them in later on. And that works really well. I actually got in trouble. I wrote an audio for them, which I think had, at one stage, had 8 characters in the room all in one go, and they only had 7 booths. So I got told off for that.
Bit cosy, was it?
I should have known.
So to bring things back a little bit more towards technology, how do you see the role of communication, technical writing, changing the nature of technology or vice versa? I mean, for example, you're using a laptop now, word processor for creating the content, but we're moving more into media, audio, video, that sort of thing. How do you see that relationship changing in the future?
Well, I started my career in information development in IBM. I was hired as a technical author back in our Warwick software lab, back in the mists of time, as previously mentioned. And one of the things I've always been convinced about is that the best way to write technical information is to write as little as you need to. And sometimes the better thing to do is to persuade the development team to design something differently so you don't have to document it. In fact, one of the things I was doing in my early IBM career was writing online help text. And this was in the days when IBM translated things into, 24 different languages. And we had a rule of thumb for how much things cost to translate. So this is back in the day. We used to say it would cost about $1 per word per language.
Okay.
So I was actually able to put a cost on all the messages I was writing. And so what I would do is I would present the developers who didn't want to redesign something in an easier to use way, or that required you to explain what you were doing when you could have made it more intuitive, by saying this documentation will cost you this much money. Yeah. And by the way, if you retranslate it, it'll cost you twice as much.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually put a $1 cost in it. So I think the best documentation is minimal documentation.
Yes.
I mean, I think about at this stage, listeners, he is waving his iPhone around. When I look at my iPhone, what's different about the documentation with the iPhone is, first of all, you don't need so much because it's using certain gestures and behaviours that have become common knowledge, or you can pick up easily. And the second thing, what's interesting, is an awful lot of Apple documentation is not written by Apple. It's written by other people. So I think that's going to be a big difference for software documentation, hardware documentation in the future, is that it'll be more social. People will be doing it for you. I don't want to depress technical authors and say there is no future in this, because one of the things is that technical authors might therefore be able to help reduce the amount of documentation that gets written, write the base stuff, and then be catalysts for the kind of documentation that gets produced by other people. So they become, what's the word I'm looking for, curators of information rather than necessarily the originators of the information.
In the message integration space, we've got formal documentation, but we've also got the community as well. People can come together, provide information from the user base and say, this has worked for me and I've solved this problem, do it X, Y and Z. Absolutely,
yeah. Well, that's a common thing. I don't know if anybody's looked up a fault with, say, their Android phone, or how to migrate something. You ping Google and you will land in a forum where the best answer to the question has been voted up You know, that,
Yeah, and the risk of that is that you want there to be a level of confidence in the information that you've got. That's why I talk about curators of
precisely,
information.
absolutely, because you could always upvote the funniest comment as opposed to the most technically appropriate.
Let's go and do that now.
When we say we,
challenge to me.
don't lay down that challenge. I'll accept it.
So, what aspect of your career are you most proud of?
I'm really proud of the work I've done on graduate recruitment, and all the way through my career, because I became a line manager in IBM for the first time in 1992. So I've been involved in doing recruitment ever since then. It's really pleasing to see people who you encourage to join the company, either as pre-university students or industrial placement students or come in as graduate hires, join and do well. There's one chap who is currently working in IBM in America. He's a vice president of development, and I remember hiring him. Now, obviously, I had a bit of help at the time, but I do keep reminding him that, we made the right choice to bring him in.
I met him for the first time the other day. I think if it's the same person, we're thinking. Yeah.
It's a secret, listeners. We're not going to tell
Yeah,
you
we're
who
not
it
going to just going to dangle the carrot.
is. Write in and tell us. At the usual address.
Yes. Comments on the forum.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to ask you, what is your favourite Blake 7 episode?
My favourite one, perversely, is the very last one.
Ooh.
Now, the reason for that is, so spoilers ahead, Blake 7 fans, if you've not got this far in your watch, that's the one where they finally track down Blake and the entire crew get shot down by the Federation. The reason it's my favourite is not because it was the end, although it is a very striking and memorable end. It's because I was working on a fan publication at the time, and I was negotiating with my pals to write for Marvel Comics because they were about to launch Blake 7 magazine. Now,
Joygasm.
launching Blake 7 magazine at a time when the programme was about to end, you might think was perhaps not prudent, but I'm not sure they were aware of that at the time. So we went along, and we were invited, therefore, to go to BBC Television Centre to watch a particular episode being made. And the episode that was being made was Blake. And we had no idea what was going to happen in the episode, so we got shown around the set. And so the first clue, as we were being shown around the set, is the Scorpio, which is the ship that Avon and his crew were in, was in tatters on the floor, And as we were being guided round by the producer, Veer Lorimer, he said, "Careful not to stand on those things because they'll set the explosions off." Okay, so that should be a clue. And then we got to go up to the...
And tempting, I'm sure.
We got to go up to the gallery where the production team sat and edited the programme together live as they were recording it in the evening. And we got to watch a few of the stuff that they pre-recorded. And this included the Scorpio crashing into a planet. So we thought, that doesn't bode well. We've not seen it do that before. And then immediately before that, we'd seen a sequence where Xenon Base, which is where the crew were based in the final series, was blowing up. We thought, that doesn't look so hot either, does it? But isn't it going to be exciting? And then we watched them film the final scene, where Blake comes in, is gunned down by Avon, and then the Federation troops rush in and shoot all of our heroes. At which point the director, Mary Ridge, said, "Thank God they're all dead."
Oh.
So that kind of explained to us what was going to happen.
Harsh. Yeah.
So,
Thank God they're all dead. Does she love her job? Was she not so particularly appreciative? I'd be shedding a tear.
So of all of the episodes to go and see, that was the most unusual, the most memorable.
Yes.
Now, what's also interesting is that we got to go into this studio just because we were hoping to write for Blake 7 magazine and we were invited along. I can't imagine anyone on a popular TV serial wanting to let three, essentially university students go in to watch the climax of a long-running series. You'd have to sign all sorts of disclosures.
Yeah.
When I was writing a novel for Torchwood, which was tied into the first series, I had to sign lots of disclosures about, how many limbs they would lop off if I told anybody about what I'd seen when I went on the set in Cardiff, for example.
Yeah.
So it was a great privilege. It was rather daunting. It was very exciting, and that's why I'm so affectionate about the final episode, Blake.
So we've seen Star Trek reboots. we've seen Battlestar Galactica reboots. Would you be in favour of a Blake 7 reboot?
Yes, I think you'd have to recast it, obviously, because all of the actors are 30 or so years older, although they are fantastically good in the audios, which I do recommend you buy from Big Finish.
We'll put a link in the notes, don't we?
But yes, I think it would be right for that sort of thing. The difficulty that the BBC would have doing it now, rather than some other company, is that it's a series about terrorism. Our heroes, on the one hand, you say, well, are they freedom fighters,
Well, there you go.
or are they murderous terrorists? And what's nice about the original series is it treads that line very nicely.
Yes.
It would be quite hard for the BBC now to make a series which seemed to be in any way espousing the idea that terrorists might have a point.
And therein, I think, is the power and why I'd like to see it remade, because I'd like to see someone walk that line, be brave, and actually start to articulate some of both sides of the story premise.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd be in favour of that.
Maybe a Kickstarter fund could be started.
Yeah, and also, with that link to Big Finish, you could also have a link to my acting portfolio.
Absolutely.
To get my submission in nice and
Voiceover
early.
portfolio.
Okay, and you mentioned in there something that I'd like to pick up on, which was that when you were writing for Torchwood, I actually happened to have brought along my personal copy of Torchwood Another Life by Peter Anghelides. I was wondering if I grovel appropriately.
Yes.
Would you be kind enough to sign it for me?
Certainly. Let's have a look inside. Let's see. Wait, you got a first edition as well,
Yes.
because the second editions have a different dedication.
It's a HursleyFM first.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, check it out.
So,
Brilliant.
It's excellent for radio. It is. You
right.
can hear the scroll.
I'll just do this so you can hear it on the microphone.
Oh,
Look at that. It's a
it's
thing
just
of
like
beauty.
being there, isn't it?
And the value of that just went up.
Oh, big time. Yes.
eBay.
Actually, I don't know about that. I think you might find that the rare sets that haven't been autographed might be worth more.
You can always rip that page out. Don't worry.
Brilliant.
And on that note,
Peter Anghelides, thank you very much indeed. This has been an absolutely delightful
Thank you for asking me. It's been great fun.
Bit of joy. Thank you so much.
Wow, wasn't that a simply awesome interview?
I say it a lot, but he is an absolute legend, isn't he?
you do say that a lot, but I'm inclined to agree with you on this one.
The listener probably isn't aware, but throughout the interview he was occasionally taking sips from a cup of tea with the Star Trek logo on the
Yes,
outside.
boom.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's for another
I
time.
know. I'll never wash that cup again. I haven't washed before, so
Why change it?
Let's start now.
But how awesome was that to actually be present for the final recording of Blake 7?
Oh,
That was a landmark in television science fiction history.
Yeah,
the series
absolutely.
in itself, but
Yeah.
just that final.
So I found out, I mean, the listener won't have heard this, but I found out from Peter afterwards when we were chatting that Blake 7 and that particular ending was an inspiration for Firefly,
yeah.
which is absolutely one of my top 5.
Oh,
Absolutely brilliant stuff.
Even Kaz enjoyed Serenity, and she is not a big fan
Wow.
of sci-fi at all.
Wow.
So, there we go. A fantastic episode. Really fascinating interview. John, where can our listener go for more information?
We have got a new domain name, HursleyFM.com. So if you go into, if you type in HursleyFM.com, you'll be taken directly to our community of awesomeness, where you can comment, pass judgment,
Abuse.
yeah.
Offer feedback.
Offer feedback if you wish.
And we can, I can't encourage this enough. Suggest people you'd like us to interview and why.
I want to interview Richard Brown.
Do you?
Richard Brown.
Are you a listener? I suppose technically you are.
I have to. I edit it, so I have
Oh,
to.
yes, of course.
I'm the proximate. I saw him on Finextra only recently, talking about cryptocurrencies, and he made this wonderful point about, at the moment, things are changing slowly, like the internet back in, say, 94, 95, 96, very, very similar.
Yeah.
If you compare the internet now to how it was back then, revolutionary.
Yeah.
He reckoned the same for cryptocurrency as well.
Interesting.
And he made a really great point about the Internet of Things evolving into the economy of things, where using Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Litecoin, you can give appliances.
Dogecoin.
I can do that.
Oh, come on.
I know.
Oh, such currency.
I might just buy some just to say.
I'm gonna. It could be a good investment.
It could well be. But he was saying you could envision a future where you had your appliances trading for energy.
Oh, brilliant!
For using their own currency, because you can assign currency very first.
You're not ruining his punchline, are you?
I don't think so. I hope not. I'm sure. I hope not. But I'd love to get them to talk more about it, because I think that's really exciting.
That sounds really good.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Good example.
So that's hopefully something to look forward to in the not too distant future.
If he still speaks to me.
Yeah, Jez, what we got to look forward
Coming
to
up in the near future, well, we might have a play around with the format. I think there's an idea that we could add a fourth panellist to our little discussion, and maybe rather than an interview, we could just get different perspective on things. So I'm going to investigate that and see what she thinks about it. But we'll have to tone her language down a bit, and maybe she won't be able to tell some of her more choice anecdotes. But I'm hoping that we can get Emma Lewis on the show.
Oh,
brilliant!
Emma. The stories everyone.
The story she is fantastic. So hopefully we can do that. Also, we've had an idea for a bit of a competition, but we're going to leave that tidbit hanging. We're going to dangle that carrot.
Teaser.
Nice.
Yeah, teaser. So
excellent.
So yeah, thank you.
Fine. Okay. In which case, it's down to me to wrap up the show and say once again a huge thank you to Peter Anghelides for being an absolutely awesome guest.
And doesn't he dress beautifully?
And quickly.
I noticed that.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you. You're always welcome here.
Goodbye.
Johnny Mac, Mr. Jezzalenko, and Dr. Adrian Warman. Best writing technology, like a colossus. It's HursleyFM.